Emily Rauh Pulitzer is the founder and chair of the Pulitzer Arts Foundation. She professionally was a curator. She started working as a curator in the 1950s and then moved to St. Louis in the 1960s to become what was then the sole curator at the St. Louis Art Museum. And many decades later, in fact, in 2001, she founded the Pulitzer Arts Foundation. And she's supported a lot of cultural organizations in the city. She's also very passionate about this chosen hometown that she moved to. And so she's been involved in a lot of civic and philanthropic initiatives throughout the city for many, many decades now. She titled this exhibition, which is in honor of the 25th anniversary, Dialogues and Conversations. And for me, honestly, it was an incredibly fitting title. The exhibition progresses through a lot of different groupings of artists that have been in dialogue with one another, or sometimes artists who are looking at other artists that they've been inspired by. And at the same time, Emmy's had a lot of personal relationships with these artists over time. So it's also a little bit of the story of her dialogue with these artists at the same time. She selected works based on a number of different criteria. Sometimes it's just artworks that she's admired or been passionate about. Others are works she's collected. And there's some artists where she worked very closely and collaboratively with them throughout their lifetimes. So for example, there's two artists that are very important to us at the Pulitzer Arts Foundation that she highlights. That's Serra and Ellsworth Kelly. Serra is an artist that she learned about in the 1960s, and she invited him to give a talk at the St. Louis Art Museum at that time, and he did. And then shortly thereafter, the man who would eventually become her husband, Joe Pulitzer, invited him to realize the artist's first outdoor site-specific commission. And so both Emmy and Joe have had a long history with Serra, and at the founding of this museum, Emmy invited Richard to create a new piece for our museum. And there's a similar narrative to Ellsworth Kelly. Ellsworth was an artist that Emmy encountered in the 1960s and 70s, but she really got to know him in the 1980s when she curated one of his first retrospectives with a curator from the Whitney Museum. And then again, over the course of his lifetime, she was very close to him. They were in regular dialogue, conversation. And then at the founding of the Pulitzer Arts Foundation, she also invited him to create a new piece for the museum, and so that's here as well. So there's artists that she's admired, perhaps from afar, or they've been of a different generation, they had passed away, but then there's artists that she has been very deeply in dialogue with over her lifetime.